Hey, welcome to episode 161 of Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. Let me tell you, my guest today has had an adventure that I could only dream of as a kid. But what I didn't consider as a kid is when with great adventure comes great challenges. Let me tell you a little bit about this amazing man. Abdulmonim Hassan Mustafa, Abdul for short, is older than his twin brother by 60 seconds. He spent much of his childhood in Yemen, vacationing in Sudan, before immigrating with his family to the United States at the age of 8, where he and his siblings had to learn a new language, a new culture, somehow make friends, and adapt to school in an entirely different country. Speaking of challenge, that sounds immensely challenging. I mean, along the same time, for comparison, I changed from a city school to a country school in the same county, and nearly abandoned my world. Abdul attended South Dakota State University. Today, while working as a server at multiple locations, he also runs his own direct selling business. I'm excited to explore Abdul's journey in more detail and learn from the wisdom he has gleaned from his many adventures. Please help me welcome Abdul.
Oh,
Hello.
hey Jason, how's it going, buddy?
Good. Thanks much for being on Awkwardly Awesome Podcast.
It's an honor for me. I'm great. I'm excited to be here.
So, so I like to start my guests off by thinking about the childhood. First, if I had known you when you were 7 years old and asked you, "Hey Abdul, what do you wish to be when you grow up?" What do you think you would have said?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I would have said I don't know because I don't think I actually knew when I was 7 years old what I wanted to be. But I was also very easily persuaded by my family and friends. And what I remember specifically is my aunt and uncle and my mom all said I should be a doctor. At the age of 7, it sounded like it was just a choice I can make and I can become it. So I decided to go follow that for a little while at SDSU to be a doctor.
So at the age of 7, it sounded kind of instantaneous to become a doctor.
Yeah, I don't think I actually wanted to be a doctor as much as I wanted success at being a doctor. The title, the finance that come with it, everything about it as well too.
Cool. Yeah, I can relate. I also wanted to be a doctor as a kid.
Yeah,
Definitely.
it just as my I talked to my friends about this. I think what it was more than anything is when I told my aunt and uncle and my family that I was thinking about being a doctor, the remarks or the responses was, "Wow, that'd be great." And it made
Mm.
me feel good to say that I'm a doctor now. So I think hung on to that feeling as a kid, deciding on this major career that I didn't even know what I was doing really at the time. And the way it made me feel when my family responded positively to it, I kind of hung on to that.
Speaking of good feelings, what are your favorite memories of growing up in Yemen? Some of them.
So I was still pretty young when it came to America. I was 8 years old. And it's funny because you talk about my story and you say the word adventure a lot. You always make me sound like a pirate, and definitely I'm not a pirate. So that's fine, okay? But
You've heard it here first. Everyone, Abdul is not a pirate.
no, I'm not. But I think the beauty in my story is, although I had a lot of stability, I had a lot of options in the way I grew up and what I saw. My father's a politician. My mom was VP of a bank, and so that afforded us a lot of opportunities financially to go to see all these amazing shows or things too. Some of my favorite memories, honestly, was being a kid on a night out when we wanted to go get some food to go out. I grew up in a household that cooked home meals for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day almost. And so to go out and spoil ourselves was a treat, even though we had the finance for it. It was just about the fact that's how we grew up. So my favorite memories was late at night after maybe attending a party for my father or something like that. We would go to Pizza Hut. It would only be a drive-through and it'd be long lines, but the cheese would melt and it'd be melted together, stick so long. And that's one of my favorite memories as a kid is that. Otherwise, I was kind of a pansy as a kid, so I didn't really do a lot of things on my own. My brother kind of led the charge, and I just kind of followed him along the ways too.
Is this Pizza Hut in Yemen?
Yes, it was in Yemen. Yeah.
So speaking of your brother, what is it like to be the older twin?
It's definitely a win. I'll tell you that. we have we have always competed, even if it's unspoken. There's always a competition of some sort, if you will. And as a kid, again, I was very quiet. I was very reserved and timid, and he was not. And I got my butt whooped a few times, whether it's by him or my older brothers, as a younger brother, of course. And so, as a kid, I loved the idea of dressing alike and being twins in everyone's eyes. He did not like that. And he would sometimes go back into the house to change, even if I chose to wear what he wore at home. So he would change all that. And so as kids, we didn't get along the best. I tell people this, the best description I can give is having a twin is having a lifelong friend. And even though we didn't always get along, we were always there for each other. And I have a memory of being a kid where this kid was picking on me. And when I got to recess, as I think I was 6 or 7 years old, this kid happened to push me down. Again, I'm a pansy, so I'm crying about it. Well, my mother happened to come around and see him push me. So he starts chasing this kid around. And then, of course, he catches him and goes and wails on him a little bit too. And that was the kind of brother I had. We didn't get along, but he's always the only one that can pick on me, basically. And so now as adults, we're both 31 years old, going on 32 here soon. He's my best friend. I go to him for everything. We talk about life in a way that I never thought was possible, considering the way we grew up together. But now he's one of my best friends as well, too.
I love the story of you coming out of the house all proud to be wearing the same
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
And your brother, you turns and goes back.
Go inside, changes it out. Nope, not happening. The only memories I have of us actually dressing the same was if my family made us do it, usually for like portraits or for pictures or stuff like that too. Otherwise, it didn't happen.
So, what kind of school did you go to in Yemen?
Actually, we went to a private school. Again, being financially well off was a privilege for us, and so we went to a private school where they were very focused on academics, and we had we always had a teacher. But when we got back home, even at the age of 5, we had a tutor for our classes to teach us the basics of math, or whether it be science or history, and even English. So we were learning English right away at the young age to help us assimilate to being successful in the future as well too. We were very fortunate to have that. Now, private school and growing up in Yemen in late 90s to early 2000. I mean, we came in 2000 when we came to America, but what I remember too is education was really important, and the teacher could discipline you as well too, not just by timeout. They can take a ruler to your hand if they have to, or whatever they have to discipline you. That was very normal there. It's there very much a community driven society there, where if you did something wrong or your neighbor saw it, he can discipline you as well.
Well, sounds sounds much different than American society. How would you compare society there to the society you experienced when you first came here?
Yeah, well, and I think that's just it. So it's very much community driven over there, and we had, again, we were lucky to be financially blessed to be over there too. But everything is, when you eat for dinner, you wait till your dad gets home. He's probably the last one coming home from work, and we sit down and we eat at a table and we eat family style. You don't have your own plates. We all share together. And the way I grew up is, what's in front of you is what you get to eat. Mom's not gonna go back to make a whole new meal just for you.
There's
Especially,
no negotiation.
no, it's what you have for what you eat. And of course, mom is gonna try to make meals that pleases everybody, of course. But sometimes you just have to eat what's in front of you and go with that. And so we were lucky to have that, I think, because it still brought us all we were always a family. I can say that even to this day, I may not be the closest with all my siblings, but I know they always got my back for regardless what happens, because we grew up as a community. And going back to Yemen to visit, same thing. We always get together as a family, as a community. And if somebody's coming to the house to visit us, well, they unfortunately just walked in to eat dinner with us now. It was just always a community style. And so going from there and coming to America, the first thing I remember is supermarkets being so big here. Whereas over there in Yemen, there was open air markets. People have fresh ingredients, whether it be the meat or vegetables, and you shopped almost every day to keep ingredients fresh. And you come here at supermarket, and it was so different, and we had to figure out how to buy stuff there, and if we can actually eat this or not, based on our faith at the time as well too. And as I get to be older, I still think that community style is still missing. Even if you sit at a table with your family, you have your own plate and you're in your own thoughts. Whereas when you have to sit over a round table with 5, 6, 7 of your family around you, you are shoulder to shoulder with them. You're as
Hmm.
close as it can be, breaking bed with your family as well too. And I think that's the biggest thing that I remember learning about the difference in life in America versus there. This is definitely more advanced technologically speaking as well, but that sense of community back home is something I'll always be cherish as well too.
Do you miss that sense of community sometimes?
I do, um, because and I'll make this comment. There's a quote I heard a long time ago. It said, "In some places, you work to live. In other places, you live to work." And that's the difference between here and there. In with my family, the community settings, like in Sudan, for example, we had this huge 3-story house, but there was only 2 males actually working in the whole household to support the whole place and maybe 30 people as well too. Any guests that came by, any events. Whereas now in America, all my family is working here and we're constantly working. Our life revolves around work. Now the goal is to advance, of course, too, but that's how different it is. Where so because of that, we always had a community back home. You always had somebody you can lean on at any time, any given moment as well too. And it's not that I don't have that here; it's just different. So I think I do miss that. Being back in Sudan, last time I was there was 8 years ago, I believe. I got a chance to spend 7 months there, and it was great. Got to know my family, my cousins really well. I retaught myself how to read and write Arabic as well too. But there was always family all the time.
So you mentioned Sudan. For the listeners, how does Sudan play into the story? Because you grew up in Yemen.
Yeah. So my mom and dad are both from Sudan. They were born there, raised there. My father became a politician pretty quickly. He had a lot of influence as well too, but he was also very vocal to speak against the Sudanese regime, which at the time was a president of 30 years, I think, if not more. By the time he got taken out of office, he was probably in office for 35 years plus. And so my father's always been very outspoken when he started going downhill, and to protect him and his family, which would be us, he moved to Yemen to be away from Sudan and their control, if you will, but was still very outspoken, I'm sorry, against the government as well too. And so all my family, my extended family outside of my immediate family at the time, was all in Sudan. So when we moved to Yemen, it was just my father, my mother, my three brothers, and I had an aunt who I grew up with thinking she was my sister because I didn't know any different. She was as young as my oldest brother. And so I thought she was my sister until I got to be like 12 years old in America and finally realized, oh, that's actually my aunt. So my dad and my mom took her in pretty young because she was always just crying without my mother, her sister, being around. And so mom already had a kid, so she just took her in as well too, and made
Mm.
her as her own.
Um, did she come to America with you too?
She did not. She was in college at the time. My oldest brother also did not come to America. He was also going to college. He was 18 at the time, went off to college as well too. And so they both went to college. She's a doctor now, married to another doctor, living in Abu Dhabi. My oldest brother is an engineer in Sudan, working for the government. But right now, there's a lot of civil war going on, civil unrest, and so they're trying to figure things out. But he got successes on his own as well too.
Wow. Oh, so you would spend summer vacations in Sudan.
All the time. Yeah,
What
it was
what
probably
what was that like as a kid?
yeah. I mean, so after we came, I don't have a lot of memories of Sudan before coming to America.
Oh well.
My first memory of Sudan was literally the same. I was 2 months before I came to America in that same 2020 year, 2000 year. I'm sorry. Um, After my father had some things going on in terms of politics, he got put in jail out of nowhere. And before we came here, basically, mom said, "Let's go home, visit our family." We had some extra money to spend, so mom went back, bought a whole house. I made sure the whole family moved over, and then we came to America to start our life again. So my first memory of Sudan as an adult now is that time we spent there. But then after we came to America, it took my mom 7 years to get her citizenship, and since I was still a minor, we got it with her as well too. My father took him 9 years to get a citizenship, but we went right away after we got a citizenship. We started going to Sudan every year, maybe 2 years instead, consistently.
How would you describe Sudan to somebody like me who hasn't been there yet?
Yeah. Okay. So it's the same as America. You've got some places that are very well developed, very advanced. Everyone's got a car there. Everyone's got a cell phone technology and such, and they have roads. May not have the best like sewer system and stuff. They kind of figure those things out, get developed. Some areas are better than more different than other areas. But then there's this village side. That's where my father grew up, but some of my family still lives, and actually that's where they went now for refuge during the civil war and civil unrest. But in this village side, they may have recently gotten electricity over the last 10 years to have consistently going there. Running water consistently be going there as well too. So all these things are now being installed, but it's still very much a rural, very old time. You still have outhouses there often to go use the restroom and such. And so you can kind of get the best of both worlds. I've lived in both areas for weeks or months at a time. I definitely prefer the more civilized area. That's how I grew up. I'm kind of spoiled in that regard as well too. But I've spent weeks or months at a time in the village as well too with my family.
Wait, you just glossed over a huge story here. Like, so your father grew up in the village. How did he ascend to become a politician?
That's a question I never got a chance to ask him. And my father unfortunately passed away in 2010. I learned more about him since then from other people who have come to me to speak about him and the effect and what he has done for them and their lives. But I never got a chance to ask him how I got into politics. But I do know that my father and my mother have always been involved and always understand what's going on in politics. And they just kind of took it very seriously as they controlled their life as well too. So my mom was VP of a bank. My father's a politician, and he's very well spoken, very well connected. And there's many different political parties in Sudan. And my father had his own political party in Sudan, and he was a leader of. But he was also in Yemen the leader of all these political parties within everything too. And so my father was very connected in that regard as well too. And that's the father that I knew. I was already 8 years old at the time, and he would host events at our house almost every week, if not multiple times a week as well too.
Um, what did the him hosting event teach you about respecting elders?
Oh yeah, and I think that goes, yeah. So there's stuff to learn from there, but it comes back to our foundation of how we grew up. My father taught me right away. My mom did too. You have to respect everyone, but the most important person to respect is anybody who's older than you. He could be he or she could be 1 minute older than you. They're officially older than you. You have to respect them. It's no regard for sex by any means. No regard for anything else. And you should still be respectful to those that are younger than you. But even if you disagree with someone who's older than you, you'll have to respect their opinion. And that was how I,
So you like that you have to respect people who are 1 minute older than.
yes, always. And it was as simple as, father had guests coming over. We get the door, of course. He taught us right away to shake hands, look him in the eyes, and say hellos. To take off our shoes when we go into someone else's house. We always had to be dressed properly and speak clearly. We ate properly with everyone as well too. But when we had guests over, then we were the ones that served everything, whether it be food, beverages, whether they needed something, a quick run to the store, we were the gophers as well too. And so we always learned that was our role as kids, is to be there for the elderly people who were there for us beforehand as well too. And so I learned a lot about respect, not only having been told what to do, but watching how he was respected by other ones as well, around him as well too, and how my mother was respected. And my mom was VP of a bank, but even the president of the bank would go to her for solutions and decisions to be made because of her tenure, also because of her age as well too, in that position as well too. And so I learned a lot about respect from that. And my mom still respected the president of the bank, even though she really had more say in what happened in the day to day there.
So as a kid, it sounds like respect might first be felt as a lot of have tos. Like I have to get the door, I have to run to the store, I have to clear the dishes.
Yep.
When did you start learning that respect was more than just a set of have tos?
I don't know if there's a. I don't know if I ever thought about it. I don't know if I have. I think it just became so normal for me. It's that question of nature versus nurture. This was something that was nurtured to me to the point that it became natural for me to be respectful. It's one of my core values. I thought about my core values 5, 6 years ago. The first one that came to mind was respect. That's just the way I grew up. You respect everyone around you, and um, it just became so normal for me to be respectful. And maybe it got reiterated as I met more people and had conversations, and they would make the comments that I'm respectful to me as well too, and that became more natural for me then. But I don't know if there was a specific moment that I changed from being a have to I want to, if you will, as much as it just became so normal.
Yeah, that's that's so powerful because as you talk about respect, it sounds like there's a lot of kindness in
Yeah,
respect.
I think they go hand in hand. There are moments where you have to respect somebody, and by doing something against their will that may not be seen come off as kind to them, if you will. But in most situations, respect goes hand in hand with being kind, being responsible, and being honest. There are three things I think that always go hand in hand with being respectful. And it's how you say things, not just what you say, but how you say things as well too. And I learned that really quickly. And it was so fun for me to have seen my brother transition to be that same way. When he was in high school, he was kind of combative, if you will, with people. Hard to get along with people. He had his core group of friends, and that's all he hung out with. That's all he talked to. And then going off to college, started expanding his group of friends. But when he started traveling around the world, I think he saw the same thing, that respect, kindness, and honesty always go hand in hand. And it started to work on him as well too. And now him and I are so alike in everything that we do, which is so great.
So now maybe he would actually wear the same outfit.
I think you would. Actually, we took some family pictures recently, and we didn't talk about what to wear or anything. But he said, "Hey, listen, I got the sweater that we just both got. Why don't you bring yours as well too?" So it actually has changed now. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
And he has to respect you because you're his elder.
yeah. But I don't think that. I think now he respects me because we are equals more than I am his elder. I don't know. I don't think he's ever saw me as his elder. He just knows I'm older than him, and that's to be understood from brothers and siblings, right? But I think now as we got older, and again, I got a chance to go spend some time with him in Austin, Texas, back in May, and actually in April, March, and I had a great time with him, and we spent 3 4 days just talking nonstop, getting to know each
Mhm.
other on a different level, realizing that we had so much more similarities in the way we think and how we operate than we had differences. And again, we're not exactly identical. We're fraternal anyway, but we're not identical in how we think. But overall, a lot of our core values are very much the same or similar.
Hmm. I want to ask you the story right now because it has some to do with respect and because I just find it awesome. But so you all moved to a new country in not like even a major city, but South Dakota, and your dad still finds a way to create powerful community and
Yeah,
and unify people.
yeah,
Can you say more about that?
yeah. So if I may, I'm going to give a quick background on my father and what brought us here because it's going to explain why we stay in a small city, if you will. So, the last few months I remember being in Yemen, my memory says, and this my mother told me, was that my mother used to tell us that my father was on a business trip and he was out of town. So, as I got older, and actually in 2020, I sat down with my mom and I talked to her. I'm like, hey, can you tell me the story about how we ended up in America and what that transition was like and such? I'm an adult now. I wanted to hear the story. And I'm going to break it down a little bit, but basically what ended up happening was my father's right hand man, who is a close family friend to ours as well too. Their kids and us, we grew up together as kids to adult. They still live in the same city as us here in Sioux Falls as well too. And
Wow.
well, they came here 3 days before us, so we're always been together. One of his best friends, his right hand man, was at a political event. And as he was there, he was speaking with a politician from a different country. And one of the representatives from Sudan happened to come up, who I don't remember if it was him exactly or if it's his leader had done something that was disgraceful he didn't agree with. And so he chose to call him out about it right then and there because that's the kind of man he is. He'll call you out on things like that. Well, this representative from Sudan felt disrespected by it. So when he went back to his office, he reached out to the Yemenis embassy and such and says that if you find this man, I want you to lock him up so we can talk with him, basically. And so one day, this gentleman was driving his car. My father was with him in the passenger seat. Was at a red light. They got pulled over. And they got taken to jail.
So this is in Yemen.
This is in Yemen. That's correct. Yep. And again, I'm at this point. I'm 7.5, 8 years old, I believe. My father got taken to jail, but the way they did it was hush hush. It was under the books. Nothing was written out. You would have not, if you called about it, they have no records about him at all, too. And they put both him and my father in jail, and they didn't tell my family either. So now mom has
Your mom didn't know what happened?
she had no idea. She was
Oh,
gone. And again, this is where I'm so thankful to how we brought up. Mom was very independent already. She was VP of a bank. She was driving a car in Yemen in 1990s when it was very rare for women to even drive a car or have their own job. And she had connections. My father also had connections. And so they're both locked up and mom is going around asking everybody if they've seen him. She hears from the right hand man. His name is Saeed. His wife calls, asks what's going on. She doesn't know what to do. So mom has to calm her down. She goes, I'll get to the bottom of this. And so weeks to months, she's reaching out. And she gets
weeks to a month. She doesn't know where her husband is or one of your best friends.
and if
Weeks
that's the
to a
case,
month.
And if that's the case, he could have been killed, God forbid, right? And so mom is getting worried, of course, but she's not showing us. We don't know anybody. We're just in kids. So she gets an anonymous tip saying, if you're looking for your husband, go check out this prison location. It's a political jail location. So she happens to go by. She asks about them. She sees nothing. When she comes out, she sees the car they were driving. It's right there in the middle of the parking lot. And so she knew something was up, of course. So she reached back out to the Sudanese embassy and the representative, tell them what's going on. Can't find anything going on. She had a family friend reach out to her asking, hey, how things going? How's your husband? And she says, I have no idea. So he comes, he goes, how'd you not tell me a few months later? He comes to find out what's going on. At this point, mom decided to reach out to different embassies in the world so we can get out of there. Because obviously it's not safe for us to be there anymore. So she had reached out, if I'm not mistaken, it was to the French embassy, Australian embassy, and the American embassy. And she reached the American embassy by foot, and it was just a few blocks away from our house. Again, this is crazy how the small things of life work out. And so as she showed up, this woman is leaving. The person she needs to get in touch with was leaving. I said, hey, I need to talk to you, please. And she goes, what's your story briefly? She tells her, she goes, okay, come on in. So she goes back in after hours. My mom tells her everything, what's going on. And she says, okay, sounds good. We're going to accept you. Let me figure out what's going on here as well, too. In the meantime, my mother and this gentleman go to the representative and say, we need to get him out. And if you don't, you're going to have problems. You know you're wrong for doing this, basically. At the same moment, the woman from the American embassy reached back out to the consulate over there as well, too, from Sudan and Yemen, and said that if this gentleman is not released in 12 hours, you're going to have problems with America. By noon, I should say, specifically. And thankfully, by next day, my father was out. And at that point, they had given us approval to come to America. Again, we were well, so we started the process of basically selling our house, selling everything in our house, and taking some time to go back home to visit our family, because who knows if we'll get a chance to come back to see our family or not. My father did not come with the Sudan. At this point, my father had been, I want to say 13 years since he's been back to Sudan, because again, he's being very vocal against Sudanese government. And so my mom and my brothers all went over there. We came back, and then we came to America afterwards. And so we got placed in Sioux Falls through the Lutheran Social Services. And I have no idea what that is. All I know is they said they have a place for us. They'll have bedding and furniture for us, and we'd have to move in, basically. And they even gave us some money to get going for the first couple of weeks to months as well, too. We came to America, and again, 3 years before us, this other family that I just told you about, they also came here as well, too. We had an uncle. He's not blood uncle to us, but he was always with us. He came with us a week later as well, too. Moved in here as well, too. And because that was family to us, basically. And we came to America, and we've been here. And I remember for the first probably 6 months of living in America, to probably the first year, mom and dad always took us on trips to visit family, visit friends, go on different events to see Minneapolis, Rochester, Omaha, Des Moines, Kansas City, to Chicago, even up to Canada and back as well, too. And I didn't know it. My mother said that they were always constantly looking for a new home because Sioux Falls was so small. We came from a big city. And they said, but every time they go to this big city, they come back, they said, no, we're good in Sioux Falls. So 6 months later, they decided, you know what, we're just going to stay here. Again, we came back with money as well. So they invested money into buying a house, same house right here as well, too. And they bought the house right away and started building a house. And within a year of coming to America, mom and dad had established a home, had already had cars, of course. My mom started going to school right away. My father was working factory jobs to make sure we're doing well. My mom also went part-time. And so we made a life here to come in Sioux Falls. And we've been here ever since. And I don't regret it. We had moments of living here where you just can't take away the small community life of Sioux Falls and the nice people that were here. I have memories of people being kind and willing to hear my father ask a question. Even if my father spoke English, it was with a deep accent. They took the time to understand him and help him get around and figure out what he needs as well, too. Same with my mother. And that was great to see. And I think that's what helped keep us in Sioux Falls.
So did your mom ever in the world, there's so many things in the news that would lead us to believe that the world is a very unkind place, right?
Yeah, it can lead us to believe that. Yeah.
But then there's stories like this. Your mom shows up at the American consulate, and the woman she needs to talk to is getting off work. So she could have just told your mom, "Hey,
Yep.
I'm off, sorry," but she listened to your mom's story, went back in, and and had things going within in a short time. Said if her husband, your dad's not released, you're going to have trouble with the American government, and then suddenly you're connected with Lutheran Social Services that has this amazing program that is just what you need.
Yeah.
Talk about kindness and way when people need it. That's a beautiful story.
It sure is. And it's again. I have this thing I tell my friends. There's always a thin thread that connects us, and there's minuscule things that have huge meaning. That if they don't happen, that I wouldn't be where I'm at today. You know, and it's the lady from the American Embassy. It's the anonymous tip that we have no idea where it came from. It's us coming here through the social services, but there's a gentleman there who works there who speaks Arabic and is also of our faith, can help us get accumulated here as well too. And it's the connection after that to my father working at John Burrell at Smithfield for 9 years, but still moving up and making money and forming a community of people that started off with just Sudanese people. Then it was South Sudanese people as well too, and all people from different faiths and walks of life as well too, and different areas of the Arabic countries as well too. My father was a big uniter. We talked about this earlier. I know we didn't chance to touch on it yet, but my father united people from Sudan. Now it's broken up into Sudan and South Sudan. But back in the day, it was one big country, but a huge divide in cultures and in languages between North Sudan and South Sudan. And my father was always a uniter for events for both locations. So if he's hosting an event or if his friend who is from North Sudan is hosting an event, he invited everyone from South Sudan. And if people from South Sudan host an event and they invite him, he invites everyone from North Sudan. So we always had a huge turnout. Any event, and it didn't have to be in Sioux Falls. It could be in Des Moines, in Minnesota, in Rochester, and wherever it may be. He united everyone together. And I didn't know the impact my father had until, again, after he passed away. When a gentleman who was from South Sudan, who, when he heard about we moved to America, he was living in Yemen with us. He moved to America, to Sioux Falls, lived 6 houses away from us just so he could be close to my father as well too. And when he heard that my father had passed away, he actually was so shocked by it that he had to get hospitalized for it as well too. And that was the impact that my father had on a community that I didn't even know about until I got older and I hear stories and stories from other people as well too.
So some people, when they have a major impact, are constantly kind of singing their own praises and letting everyone know. That doesn't sound like your father's way of being at all.
Ever. I mean, I didn't even know what he did. And I'm his own son. That's not how he was. He carried himself as a normal guy, just doing his best every day. But I think his impact was in interpersonal relationships, is within people, the people he talked to and such. And it was the impact that way to tell people that they matter, that he's there to help, so what if he can from that way as well too. And what that did in turn is it impacted a whole lot of people in the same community. And that was him. I don't think he would ever know that he had an impact like that or that he even thought about it. I think he just did what he thought was the best thing and the right thing to do.
It must have been such a sad time being at his funeral, but also so inspiring
Yeah,
at the same time to see how he impacted so many people.
it was weird. Uh, because he was sick, so it wasn't exactly unexpected, but he was on the recovery at the time. He was getting better. So it was still surprising. And this is my father. He's my hero. He's the guy that I thought would live to the end of the world to see my own kids. And so I think it was surprising. And to see other grown men crying about my father made me realize the impact he had as well too. And I was fortunate. I was in college at the time. It was actually semester exam week. He had passed away, and all my friends from both college and in high school would come stop by to see me in the middle of exams just to say hi. And I needed their support. I didn't know as much until later on. I needed their support to get through things, and I was fortunate to have that. So I was able to stay positive and uplifting and be a support for my mom here as well too. And although it was sad, I got through my emotions pretty quickly. I decided to be there for mom instead. Mom, of course, that's her best friend for 30 years, was distraught.
Wow. Wow. Um, this is life calls us to be courageous at different times, and
Yeah.
and being there for your mom. I bet took courage, and you rose to the occasion.
I appreciate that. And that may be the truth, but I think the people I know and the people I've met would do the same thing. My oldest brother was here at the time, but he had to go back now that father had passed away. He had to go back to his home in Sudan. My older brother was in the military and he couldn't be here. It was me. My twin brother shut himself out from the world because he didn't want to deal with the emotions and thinking about it. And we had some good conversation about it afterwards that helped us kind of overcome those feelings and such too. But um, I think at the time is what I had to do. Mom couldn't work; she couldn't function, and so it's for me to go shopping and to make sure things are getting done around the house while she rested up and got through her feelings. And she had a great support as well around her at the time as well.
So when we talked before, you said a few things that you learned from life. And I just wanted to ask you
Yeah,
about a couple of them.
yeah, for sure.
How have you come to realize that most people are good people?
I think it's what I saw. It's just what I always saw. I saw mom and dad always helping other people. I saw my older brother, always helping other people. When I go to Sudan, I remember being there for Ramadan, and so everyone is fasting. It's 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. Sun's going down, and we had a bunch of guests at our house, so we had different places to eat as a community, as a family. And I sat outside. It was outside the house. We are sitting out trying to eat, and a gentleman is walking by. Nobody knows who he is, but it's time to eat. And if he's not sitting down to eat, that means he doesn't have anywhere to go. So we just say, "Hey, come join us." A random
Mm,
person, a stranger. And that's just what I always saw. I was always trying to help and give back. It's my father taking in his niece or his sister-in-law, I'm sorry, as his own daughter, and me not understanding that at the time, not knowing it, because I thought I grew up with thinking she's my sister because he treated her as my equal and such. And I think it's just what I saw. I tell people this all the time. I was blessed in everything in my life that led to me being coming to America. Everything about my life, I've been blessed to have a great mom and dad, a great brothers as well too, and family as well too. Support and friendship here as well too. I have great friends as well too. I've always been blessed, and I think that alone helps me think that everyone's good. The second thing is, I think at the core of people, they want to do good. Some may not be able to, but and maybe some are conditioned not to. You know, I was watching a movie years ago, and I don't know what it's called anything too, but it's about blood diamonds and such like that. And it's this gentleman in Africa who kills villages, takes in kids, and makes the kids his soldiers. And I'm watching these kids that know that holding a gun against somebody is wrong, and they're scared to do it, but it's what they know to do. It's all they've been taught, and that's where I think the idea really came in. That I think people want to do good, they just may not be able to. You know, it's the same as somebody who's lost everything, who lives on the street. Well, even those people can go out and rob a bank or rob you, but they'd rather sit there and beg. I think people at the core want to do good.
Mm. Very, very inspiring.
Appreciate that.
Well, why do you find it important to let bygones be bygones?
There's no point in holding on to it. My It's so funny because my twin brother used to hold on to grudges. And I remember he says this to this day, he still remembers it. One of our best friends to this day, like this guy's name is Ochan, he lives in Omaha. Close friends. His family is close to my family as well, too. My twin brother now is this guy's godfather. I'm sorry, a godfather to his kids.
Okay.
And so my brother tells me back in middle school or high school, I don't know exactly what happened. He said, I don't remember. He said, but I got mad and I cut him off for a year. For a year, he held on to that grudge. And I look back at it, I'm like, and I don't know why. Because what did I miss out on for that year in our friendship that could have built, or the memories you could have made as well, too? And that's why I think let bygones be bygones is so important. There's no point to hold on to a grudge. Even if you're mad at something, either address it or look past it. One of the two has to happen. So if you just hold on to it, more than likely, you're making yourself feel a negative feeling that nobody else is feeling. It infects you more than anybody else as well, too. I read a lot of books about that, you know, and then in my journey as well, too, about keeping a positive perspective. And it's so important to do that.
That point is really powerful. When we hold on to something, we are consciously making ourselves again and again feel a negative feeling.
Yeah. I mean, by nature, even though we want to do good, as humans, we are also selfish by nature. We are thinking about how this benefits us. Well, if you're worried about somebody else who may have done something wrong to you in the past, I guarantee you he's not thinking about it. He's thinking about his own life, or she's thinking about her own life right now, her own situation she's got to deal with. She's not thinking about how she made you feel 2 weeks ago. So that's why I think it's important to let things go. It doesn't infect you. And it doesn't make you look at someone else in a negative light that way as well, too.
So you talked to me when we talked before about generating respect.
Yeah.
How do you take those ideas and all you've learned from your upbringing into the work you do now as a server?
Yeah. You know, I think respect is this. I had a conversation with my nephew a few months ago. My nephew was we were walking to the movie theaters, I think, and he would just kick the door or the trash can. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, what is that about? And he doesn't know what he's doing, obviously. I said, that's really disrespectful. He goes, what does respect mean? And I had to find a way to explain respect to a 5 or 6-year-old. It's still hard to do, by the way. I still haven't figured it out just yet. But I think it's important to respect everyone as if it was your own stuff. And so the idea for me of general respect is the same way as I think of how would I want to be treated. Coming from Sudan, where my family's from, but growing up in Yemen, I had 2 different cultures there, same language, but different dialects as I'm speaking it there. And then I moved to America, where now I have my memory of a Sudanese culture I grew up at home, but a Yemenis culture of where I lived. And yet now I'm learning this American culture where I'm not seeing a mosque every block and hearing the azan to pray 5 times a day. I just see churches left and right. And I'm seeing people who are very pale skinned more often than I ever have in the past. And they don't speak my language. and now I look weird because I'm dressed different as well too. And so I had to realize that everyone is different. Everyone's got their own situation as well too, and you've got to be open to things. Growing up as a Muslim, converting to Christianity, I had to realize that I had to be open to other people's point of view on things. That I'm not necessarily right and they're not necessarily wrong, at least not to them. I have my own core beliefs, but I don't have to put that on you. And I think when you respect other people's space, their opinions, and their point of view, you start generating respect. It's the same as me coming into work and realizing that if we have a task to do, there's more than one way to accomplish the same task. It's not about who's right, it's about which one you want to do. And I think when you do that, you open up that door for people to see you differently. And hopefully you have a positive effect that you generate respect. And then two, it's how you speak with people. I know some people have had rough lives, different things they have to deal with, and maybe they're the people who have had to hold on to contentment or those negative feelings and grudges on people, that all they know now is to not trust people. But I think when you have these things where you think people are naturally good and they want to do good, then you can't help but be open to them, to at least give them a chance to keep earning your trust, and to therefore you're going to respect them in that regard as well too. I think when you do that, you earn their respect. Even if they're naturally not the kindest person, they will be then after that, at least to you. And that's where I think genuine respect comes from. It's understanding people have had different lives than you. They think, they act, they talk differently. It doesn't mean that they're wrong, it just means that they're different. And guess what? Being awkwardly awesome and being different goes hand in hand.
It sure does.
Yeah.
Sure does. That's a great point. Great connection. Great connection.
It's
How
true.
about you're also engaged in a direct selling business.
Yeah.
How does generating respect apply to selling? Because I've observed that we humans just get so often we get kind of strange about selling, either the idea of being sold to or the idea of selling. We
Absolutely.
like forget our normal way of being and do this other thing.
Well, I think it's your perspective on selling. I heard I'm gonna come back to this comment later on, but somebody once told me the definition of selling. What do you define it as? And I said selling a product, basically is what I said. Use the same word. He said my definition of selling is the transaction of taking excitement about a product or service from you and transfer it on to somebody else. And I'm like, I like that definition. And that's a true idea. That's how I think of selling. I don't think about somebody else spending money specifically. It's about a product. And I realize that I do this all the time. If I watch a new show like Ted Lasso, for example, I talked about that for 3 weeks in a row. And guess how many people watch Ted Lasso on it because of it too? If I got the chance to do some hot yoga recently, I've been doing it a couple of times now. People now want to join me for hot yoga as well too. So all these things that I get excited about, all those people get excited about it too. And now they want to do it with me. All I'm doing now is I'm just capitalizing an opportunity with a specific product or service instead too. So the thing about direct selling and my involvement with it is it came out of the blue. It was at a time when I was trying to be the man of the house, like I said earlier, with my father, my mother, and such. I was 23 years old. It was a couple of years after my father passed away. I'm working full time at a restaurant as a management at Pizza Ranch. I am in school full time, taking way too many credits, and still trying to have a social life as well too. And I got to a point where I was just kind of stuck in my life. I felt like I was doing all this effort and I'm not moving forward. And I asked myself some questions like, do I want to be a doctor? Is this actually what I want or not? And at the same time, I met a gentleman while I was working out, actually, and he introduced me to direct selling and through a company called Amway. But the beauty wasn't just the company. The business plan made sense. But what I was looking for was who are the people who are doing this with me? And it was this guy named Tyler, but this couple named Andy and Melissa, who became my best friends now as well, two of my mentors. We're actually going on a trip to Tennessee on Thursday for this business as well too. but we go a day and a half early so we can enjoy ourselves and kind of get some time just to hang out as well too. But the beauty about the business was these people I can tell are successful already. These people are people who I'd want to follow who can teach me something. The same as working for Ricardo and Maribeth. They're great people.
Mm.
They'd be willing to teach me something as well too. Yeah. And so once I made those connections, I decided to start building a business plan. And what I thought was just me focusing on selling products and building a team developed into me, yes, doing that, but also realizing that if I knew all the information I needed to know to be successful, I already would be successful. And since I didn't describe myself as successful, there's some work that I had to do within me, some skills to learn, some developments I had to do. And so I jumped into reading personal development books. I see some of the books you have behind you there as well too. I have my own library over here as well too. Um, my favorite books is how the magic of thinking big and um, how to forgive me, how to win friends and influence people as well too. And for
Mm.
probably 4 years there, I read that book twice a year. Every 6 months, I'd pick up that book again
Wow.
because I wanted to get better at communicating and having the how to having people enjoy me and my presence, being better at communicating. And I was struggling with that in the past. And so I did all this personal development. And then, at the same time, right up to that point, I was working full time, going to school full time, but I was also going to the bars 4 or 5 days a week as well, too, with my friends. 'Cause that's how I saw them. And when I got in business, the best transition I ever did was I cut off my friends. Now, I could have done it better, but there's some of my friends now, which works out. But I cut off my friend and I focus on only putting good in. If I was driving my car, I'm not listening to music anymore. I'm listening to podcasts. If I'm at home, I'm either listening to a podcast if I'm moving around, or I'm reading a book if I'm sitting down. My TV didn't go on for a while. And if it did, I'm probably watching a kids movie or a positive feel good movie instead as well too. Or a documentary of some kind so I can learn about things as well too. For 3 years, that was me. I stopped drinking that time. I stopped anything else that wasn't good for my body as well too. For 3 years, I focused on only putting good in because when you put good in, good comes out, and that's what I focused on. And it was the best. I think I needed that development to be the person I am today, for the way that I think, for the way I communicate, for how I operate my life, and my values that I carry to this day come from those 3 years I spent learning about myself, and at a time as well when even though I didn't have my father, I had a mentor in my life who was there to be there for me at all times. And I met other people to be mentors for me as well too. I think I needed that those 3 years. And so the influence of the direct selling business for me goes far beyond just making some money on the side because I've seen it improve my life. I've also been able to be a part of improving other people's life that I've met with this business as well too. And I'm not talking about financially specifically. I'm talking about seeing a friend of mine go from living in his car to having a wife, 2 kids, a apartment of his own, keeping a job to himself, and actually being happy every day as well too. And seeing those things happen, seeing my mentor's life get better, seeing my life get better, and it's been cool. And that's I think what excites me the most about the idea of direct selling or network marketing. It's not just about the business model because I can come up with a model just like this, if not better. But it's the people I've met and the community we have that focus on personal development that's really so unique.
So three more questions,
Yeah.
and I say that because I could ask you questions all day.
Yeah, we could talk for a long time, Jason.
So why did I forget? Oh, so many people want to improve their lives, but when we hear something like, for 3 years I invested heavily and radically alter my life, we can get kind of squeamish and say, "Oh, I don't want to put in that much effort.
Yeah,
I want to look for a way to get rich fast, or
absolutely.
whatever." What would you say to encourage people to put the time into personal growth?
It's a great question, Jason. And it's actually kind of fitting because over the last 2 months, I'm reinvesting myself in personal development again. I learned that I can't stop growing, and I stopped reading books and listening to podcasts. So I'm back into it now. But I'm also
And just an aside, it's not like you, Abdul, have nothing going on. You're working two jobs plus you're doing direct selling. So
yeah,
continue.
yeah, and I have opportunities coming up for a different job coming up here soon. That's considering moving as well to Austin, Texas, to be with my brother. I've been able to be a point man for my family, which has been a blessing as well too. My family's doing well. Don't get me wrong, but it's nice to know that they can always count on me if they have a question or concern or things need done as well too. So all the things have also been great. So you're right. I'll tell you this: I'm no guru by any means, right? I'm just a person who has done this before, who I can give advice on as well too. I think if I had the choice, if I had the choice to, for example, if you're my son, you ask me how I can start develop myself, I would tell you find somebody that you trust to be your mentor. I
Mm,
think having guidance while you're learning is nice because as you learn things, this person can give you feedback with it, can help you either feed into it or direct you to a better path as well too. That was my first thing, as I had mentors in my life that I can go to as a person developing. The second thing I would tell you too is start with one thing. Over the last couple of months, I realized. Last year, I got to a point in my life where I was physically unhealthy. I couldn't do my daily task in my job without wheezing. And I got to about 250 pounds in weight. I have pictures where I looked at myself like, who is that person? Because I was just big, unhealthy. I didn't have the energy to go through the day. And so I started working out. I started focusing on my diet first. I started working out, and that's what I realized. And then I started reading again and listening to podcasts and all this stuff, and working out 3, 4, 5 days a week, and including basketball and stuff. And it didn't start with me doing all the things right away. It started with one thing. My first thing I did was I focused on my diet, and it wasn't a strict diet of no, you can't have this, no, you can't have that. It was me understanding that I'm 31 years old, that if I'm in a hurry, I'm going to stop at Burger King every so often. But that's okay, as long as I'm not stopping there every day, you know? It was me realizing that my life is so full with seeing my friends, helping out my family, hanging out with my nephews, and visiting my travel all the time as well too, that I probably can't work out 5, 6 days a week every single week. And if I only work out 3 times in 1 week, that's still a win. That's what I
mm,
need to start off with. And so that's
mm,
what I did. I started one thing and I would slowly add something else. So I'd first start off with a diet, then it was me working out, and then it was me while working out deciding instead of listening to music, why don't I put a podcast in instead too? And then it changed from a podcast to I'm gonna read this book now instead, and while I'm listening to. And all these little things started changing. And then I started researching, diets and what I eat and the sports nutrition product line as well too. And got excited about that as well too. So I say start with one thing. One thing that you can do and make a win out of it every week or every day. One thing you can do, and if you can do that consistently, if you put I read a book that said if you can do 5 days in a row of the same task, it becomes a habit. Some people say 21 days, some people say 10,000 hour rule. I would say 5 days. If you went 5 days of making rice at 5 p.m. when you got home every day, when you come home on the sixth day, you're gonna think, I need to make rice, whether it's a plan or not. And so it just becomes a habit quickly. And so I would say put some time together, but focus on one thing. Once it becomes so natural that if you don't do it, you feel bad, add a different thing to your weekly thing, whether reading a book or listening to an audio. And reading a book was the hardest for me, by the way, because I don't like reading. I still I still don't like reading books, but I like having read books. I like the knowledge I get from reading books. And so
mm,
this thing where I have to schedule a time and commit to it, not because I enjoy sitting back and reading books, but I love the knowledge I get from reading books instead.
mm.
And I also keep books around me everywhere I go. I keep different books near me, whether it's here, next to my bed, in my car. That way, if I get bored and I have nothing to do, instead of jumping on my phone, grab a book quick and read it.
Wow, powerful, powerful.
Yeah.
Two more questions.
Yeah.
So whether it's telling someone about TIDLAS or selling someone a product, there's always a possibility that that person might say, no, this is not for me.
Absolutely.
How have you learned to deal with the naturalness of people saying no sometimes?
Well, I think it's just it's natural. If I'm concerned about sales specifically, my perspective is every no means I'm closer to a yes.
Mm,
So if you say no to me, I'm still celebrating. Yes. I'm not thinking about you specifically with selling this product anymore, and I can move on to the next person. And secondly, it means that the next person could be my yes, because there's going to be someone who's going to say yes to me eventually. You know what I mean? And secondly, if I'm not worried about sales specifically, if I'm talking about just living my life, well, my goal isn't to make you like me. My goal is to share something I'm excited with. If you, excuse me, if you're excited about it, awesome. If you're excited about it, that's fine. I will just share for the sake of sharing most of the time, honestly. And yes, I'd love to share that memory with you, but it's okay, you know. And that's part of that. That's part of that question you asked earlier about generating respect. I've got to respect other people's opinions as well too.
mm,
I expect that I am. How do I say it? I talked to my mentor recently. He said there's some people in that you'll meet that they believe that they are God's greatest gift on earth, that they're probably the smartest person in the world, and that your ideas don't mean anything unless it comes from them. And that is true. There are some people like that. And he said, and those are the people that you probably want to spend less time with. So you have to decide then, do you want to be like that person or do you want to be different?
mm,
It was truth. And that's where I
mm,
agree with the idea that no one's going to be the same as me. I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I'm probably going to be but there's probably going to be more people that I am their cup of tea than people that just don't like me. And that's my goal. And that's my goal with sales. That's my goal with talking about the movie I just saw recently, and that's my goal with living life as well too.
mm. Powerful,
Yeah.
powerful. So last question in the show and in my business, I talk about the power of doing our imperfect best. And what it means to me is I envision the best I want for myself and that I want to contribute to the world. And then I go for it. But when mistakes come up, when obstacles come up, instead of using those as a reason to say, no, I'm not doing this. I learn from them and move forward.
Yeah.
What does doing your imperfect best mean to you?
I think it's accepting that I'm not perfect. It's exactly that. It's what I said earlier that moderation is key for me in my diet, in my exercise, and how I live my life. And there are moments where I'm going to see my friends every weekend, and there are moments where I want to see them for 3 months. And there are moments in my life where I'm going to be really good about my diet and I'm going to eat really well. But there are some days that I'm not going to. And just because I had one bad week, it doesn't take away from all the negative stuff I had. And I used to be a very much head in person. I was all in all the time. And if I wasn't all in, then I was completely all out. And now I like to know the fact that if I'm only partway in, I'm still there. I'm still trying. And so I'm not perfect. I would tell anyone this. I am not perfect. I try my hardest to be as good a person I can. Try my hardest to be a great worker, to be a good friend. Try my hardest to be good at my goals that I set and the things I want to accomplish. I try my hardest to compete at a high level as well too, in everything I'm doing as well. But I'm not perfect. I'm not going to win every competition. I'm not going to be the best server. I'm not going to be the best salesman. I'm not going to be your best friend. You know, my Ochon, for example, our best friend down in Omaha. Through all of high school, I was his best friend. We hung out all the time. Through college, we decided to go to college together. We lived in the same dorm our freshman year. We hung out all the time. I was always with him and such too. But then when he had a kid, he named my brother as his godfather for his kids. I don't take offense to that by any means because at the end of the day, we're not perfect. And I know that my brother had conversation with him that I didn't have to him at a time when he was having a kid. And it makes sense. And that is totally okay because I still see him as my best friend and he still sees me as his as well too, even though I'm not necessarily his godfather's, his kid's godfather as well too. And so that's where I think that you have to find out what you're good at and and excel at that at the highest level. Focus on tweaking the things you're not that good at and get better at them as well too. But understand at the end of the day, we're not perfect, and the only perfect person there is Jesus Christ. And therefore, if you're not going to be as good as Him, be okay with who you are.
So inspiring. Thank you so much, Abdul, for your time and being on today, and yeah, thanks so much.
No, thank you, Jason. This was actually great. I appreciate that.
I I wish I had advised you to have at the beginning of this podcast to get a notepad out and take vigorous notes, and I knew we would have a good conversation, but I didn't know it would be this good. Abdul's perspective is amazing. If you want to go back and re-listen and take some notes, this would be a great episode for that. Thanks for listening to Awkwardly Awesome podcast. I'll have another amazing guest next week. Remember, you are the best and only you in the world. So thanks for being you. Until next time.